2 bullets can't kill a commando. Captain Jaidev Dangi. Trial, Jammu and Kashmir, the 19th of June 2014. The commando smiled. It was Ritu. Her name blinked on his battered iPhone screen. The two had exchanged rings 4 months before, on Valentine's Day in 2014, as she had wanted. In 2 more months, he knew what would happen. He would be hoisted onto the shoulders of his comrades in his para-SF unit and packed off to rural Haryana to be married. Ritu Saturday in her hostel room in Rohtak, waiting for the commando to pick up the phone. She would not disconnect until the phone had rung through. If he didn't pick up, she knew he would call back. From his team's operating base in the terrorist haven of Tral in South Kashmir, Captain Jaidev Dangi, 25 years old, always called back. He swiped to accept the call. Captain Dangi and Ritu had not known each other before they had been brought together by the families earlier that year. It had been awkward in person, and since Captain Dangi had no choice but to rush back to Kashmir after the engagement ceremony, they had only come to know each other over text messages and the daily phone call, which was sometimes as brief as a few seconds. Captain Dangi sounded relaxed that June evening, not something that Ritu got to hear often. She had found him calm enough not to ask about his work. Instead, she kept the conversation light, telling him what she had decided to wear for the wedding and the additions she was hoping to make to the guest list. Captain Dangi, who usually acknowledged every word she said with a sound, suddenly seemed distracted. Ritu found herself talking into a void. Something was amiss. The commando always gave her his full attention when he spoke to her. All too soon, he cut in abruptly. Ritu, listen, I can't talk. I will speak to you later. Don't call back. He hung up. Ritu held the phone to her ear for a few seconds after it was disconnected. Was this what it was always going to be like? She waited for a few moments, staring out of her hostel window. Then she tapped out a text message and sent it. Call me when you're free. Please take care. The silence was new, but Ritu had been faced with Captain Dangi's hushed, distracted tone earlier. A month before, on the 5th of May, as the country braced itself for the big verdict of the national elections, her fiancé had fronted an operation that led to the killing of a Pakistani terrorist in a village near Tral. On that day too, he had cut the conversation short. Ritu knew that the man she was to marry was a soldier whose business was to hunt and kill terrorists. But that first time had made her blood run cold. It was something she would never quite get used to. Nor would Captain Dangi's family. The commando jogged to the operations briefing room that evening on the 19th of June 2014. Captain Dangi and his team of para-SF warriors had returned to the base earlier that day from a different operation. And just as Captain Dangi had begun to tentatively unwind over the phone with Ritu, a fresh intelligence input had alerted the team to the presence of a terrorist inside a house in Baku village, less than 10 kilometers away. As the team spilt out of the field headquarters, the distinct scent of eucalyptus floated through the mild summer breeze. Young Kashmiri boys were enjoying a game of cricket at the playground a stone's throw away. The comforting sound of a ball against bats hewn from the willow trees abundant in the area resounded in the air. The men did their final weapons check as an electric crackle passed through the team. Familiar to all soldiers, it is the frisson right before a hunt. Captain Dangi stroked his full beard. Normally clean-shaven and boyish, the lush growth on his face made the young commando look much older than his 25 years. Either way, it was crucial to his work. A beard helped conceal his identity as an outsider. There was now another incentive to keep it, though. Clean-shaven at his engagement, the commando had let his beard grow since, sending Ritu a stream of daily selfies that documented the steady shrouding of his sharp jawline with thick hair. Ritu reacted instantly. She forbade him to shave. The hunt Captain Dangi's team had set off on that June evening was a special one. The commandos had been waiting for that particular intelligence input for months. The body language was brimming with quiet excitement. The man whose whereabouts had been discovered was no ordinary terrorist carrying an AK-47 and a few magazines. He had been prowling South Kashmir for several years and was far more wily and dangerous than the men Captain Dangi's team usually hunted down. It was Adil Ahmed Mir, a Hezbollah Mujahideen area commander who the commandos had pursued unsuccessfully for several months. Adil had been mentor and trainer to Burhan Wani, then an upcoming social media-savvy Hezbollah commander, whose killing 2 years later in 2016 would plunge the Kashmir Valley into a fresh cycle of bloodshed and turmoil. Adil could not be allowed to slip through the net this time, as he had several times in the past, to the intense frustration of the many teams that had been dispatched to capture him, dead or alive. A Caspian mine-protected vehicle carrying the commandos rumbled off from Hardamir towards the location where Adil Mir was supposed to be hiding. The Hardamir company operating base offered a sweeping view of the area, including Baku village in the distance and the thick forest around it. Captain Dangi quickly organized his thoughts. There was first a sense of disbelief that Mir had allowed himself to be spotted. Over 6 months, the terrorist had honed his skills of shaking his pursuers off into an art form. Captain Dangi set everything else aside and focused his thoughts on the one thing he was certain of: Adil's killing or capture would deal a crushing blow to the Hezbollah Mujahideen. We were 99% sure it was Adil Mir and 100% sure we would get him, recalls Captain Dangi. My team was looking forward to the action, as this is what we were trained for. It was our chance to get the slippery fellow. You know, he never used a cell phone. He was so guarded. It was the height of summer and the sun would not disappear below the horizon for at least another 90 minutes, as the commandos sped towards the map location they'd been given. As the Caspian rumbled swiftly past apple orchards, towering china trees and lush paddy fields, Captain Dangi and his men conducted a quick tactical briefing. They made it to the spot in less than 10 minutes. Captain Dangi recalls the conversation he had with his men inside the vehicle. And here a Honshe Peli Operation Katamkana High, we have to finish the operation before darkness sets in. He did not need to tell them twice. The men knew that this was likely to be their one final chance to get Adil Ahmed Mir before he truly disappeared before the winter months. It was 1,700 hours when Captain Dangi's 8-man squad reached Baku village with a team each of 3 Rashtriya rifles and the J&K Police Special Operations Group in tow. The intelligence input they had received was specific. It pointed to the presence of only one terrorist, Adil Ahmed Mir himself, in the village. This would soon prove to be a dangerous miscalculation. Stepping quietly out of the Caspian vehicle in daylight, a short distance outside the village, the team was faced with a fresh quandary. The intelligence input had failed to factor in a crucial point. The man in whose home Adil was supposedly present owned 3 adjoining houses in the same compound. If Adil was actually there, he could be in any of the 3 houses. In a matter of seconds, finding Adil Ahmed Mir had become thrice as difficult. The men were rapidly assigned their roles before they headed towards the compound with the 3 houses. The Rashtriya Rifles soldiers would lay a cordon in front of the compound. Captain Dangi and his commando squad would position themselves behind the wall at the rear end of the complex. The young officer's instincts had told him that this was the escape route Adil was likeliest to take. Captain Dangi and his 19-year-old buddy, Paratrooper Mukesh Kumar, took cover behind a eucalyptus tree with the Tavor TAR-21 assault rifles. They had chosen the spot for its unobstructed view of the compound's backyard. The 2 men did another weapons check as the sun sank a little lower on the horizon. Almost 800 kilometers away, Ritu was sitting in her hostel room, a silent prayer on her lips. The eucalyptus scent wasn't just a familiar friend in the Kashmir Valley. Captain Dangi had grown up in Haryana's Medina village, where towering eucalyptuses lined the edges of fields owned by his father, who had died when Captain Dangi was still in school. For a boy who did not know much about the army when he was a teenager, and who was coaxed by his physics teacher to sign up, Captain Dangi's journey to Kashmir as a commando is an intriguing one. It was his instructor at the IMA, March, Kunal Rathi, who made him take the big step into the Paris. If you want to do what you are being trained for, then come to Special Forces, the cadet had been told. He had never regretted the decision. Captain Dangi and Mukesh strapped on the ballistic combat helmets. The remaining men had also formed pairs with the buddies and taken positions behind Captain Dangi and Mukesh. This was to provide the lead pair cover, while sealing off alternative routes that could allow the terrorist to reach the stream and swim to the forest beyond. If he reached the forest, this mission was as good as dead. The police team cautiously approached the entrance to the main house, ready to open fire if required. Seconds after they knocked on the door, Captain Dangi spotted a well-built, bearded man in a Ferran make a wild dash out the back door. Not only was this a suspicious move, it was plainly hostile and confirmed the intelligence input. Yet standard protocol had to be followed. The commandos had to be absolutely sure that the man who had rushed out of the house was not a civilian. In an icy calm voice trained not to alarm, Captain Dangi called out to the man, asking him to reveal his identity, remove his Ferran and drop his weapon to the ground if he was carrying one. You can surrender if you want to. There's still time, Captain Dangi warned. This routine drill during the conduct of counterterrorism operations exposes soldiers to enormous additional risks. But nothing is more important to the army than eliminating the possibility of collateral damage. Never mind if it increases the chance of its own casualties, as it very often does. The man did not respond to Captain Dangi's call. Instead, he jumped across the compound's back wall with the support of his left hand while the other grasped a now visible AK-47 assault rifle. As he landed on the ground 15 meters away from Captain Dangi and Mukesh, the terrorist opened fire. Dodging that first hail of bullets, the commando leaned towards Mukesh. Iska kill Katam, his game is over. The two men exchanged quick nods. It is near impossible to describe the trust buddy pair's place in each other during operations. Placing their lives in each other's hands forms the basis of the relationship. When a firefight breaks out, buddy pairs are not just working towards eliminating an adversary, they also draw strength from and protect each other. It is a force multiplier system that creates the most basic human linkage at a tactical, instinctive and emotional level. Right in front of them, the terrorist fired for 8 more seconds until he drained his first AK-47 magazine. Before he could reload his rifle, Captain Dangi and Mukesh began the counter-fire, sending 6 single shots each from the TAR-21s whizzing through the air and straight into the terrorist's body, shredding him where he stood. The precision shots ensured swift death. If the intelligence input was accurate, the mission had just been successfully completed. It lay in a bloody heap in front of the two lead commandos. And yet somewhere in Captain Dangi's reptilian brain, he knew it couldn't have been this easy. The men would know only moments later how the intelligence input had really only scratched the surface. We relaxed a bit for a few seconds thinking we had got our guy. But hell, we were wrong. Everything had only just begun, remembers Captain Dangi. Less than a minute after the first man was shot dead, 2 more terrorists sprang from the house they were hiding in and immediately opened fire at Captain Dangi's position. Firing their weapons on full automatic, the terrorists took the warriors by surprise. Not only had the intelligence input specified the presence of a single terrorist, the 2 men who had just emerged were not making any attempt to escape like the first one, they were in all-out attack mode. It quickly dawned on the squad that the terrorists seemed to be following a well-thought-out plan. The first one stormed out of the house and made contact with the commandos. The ensuing firefight revealed the position Captain Dangi and Mukesh were holding. The next 2 terrorists emerged by surprise to finish the commandos off. At this point, Captain Dangi and his squad did not know that one of the 2 men firing at them was Adil Ahmed Mir. The man they had just shot dead was only a foot soldier, either Abdul Ahad Shah or Tariq Ahmed Pare of the Hezbollah Mujahideen. But the 2 men now firing aggressively at him were doing so with a worrying level of skill. The 2 were firing very accurately. They were extremely well trained. The sheer intensity of the fire forced us to take cover with our heads down. We had to do something quickly, recalls Captain Dangi. He remembers feeling a spasm of anger at the abrupt turn of events that had put the commandos on the defensive. He felt a familiar dryness of the mouth as he wondered if the 2 terrorists would use their hail of fire from just 20 meters away to make a getaway. What he had not accounted for was actually taking a bullet while this happened. The 2 terrorists had realized that they would need to get rid of Captain Dangi and Mukesh, the lead pair, if they were to disappear into the tall grass and crawl down to the stream without being pursued. They were surrounded and that was the only exit route. By now, they were desperate to break out of the cordon laid by the commandos to prevent their escape. The trunk of the tree behind which Captain Dangi and Mukesh had taken cover was not wide enough to shield them both. Sensing an opportunity to pin the commandos down, if not hit them directly, the terrorists began moving towards them, their rifles blazing non-stop. Captain Dangi felt a sudden stab of pain in his left thigh as a Kalashnikov bullet ripped through it. Immediately after, a second bullet pierced his abdomen on the side. Under the hail of ammunition, Captain Dangi inspected his injuries for a moment, but quickly looked to his buddy. To his horror, Mukesh had sustained nearly identical injuries to the right side of his body. It was only when I saw blood gushing from my wounds that I realized I had been shot. I was more worried about Mukesh as his injuries seemed to be worse. The tree trunk had covered our vital organs but some parts of our bodies were exposed, recalls Captain Dangi. He quickly checked Mukesh's helmet. Fortunately, it was intact. No headshots. Kuch nahi hua hai. Thodi si lagi hai, nothing has happened. It's a minor wound, you are alive. Stay that way, he told Mukesh. It had been barely a year since Mukesh had enlisted in the army, and Captain Dangi knew his first gunshot wounds would shake him up more than a little. His battle fatigue soaked in blood, the pallor on Mukesh's face showed that he thought the end was near. Over the deafening crackle of fire drawing towards them, Captain Dangi whispered to his buddy. Pointing to his own wounds, Captain Dangi told him 2 bullets were not enough to kill a commando. Mukesh smiled weakly, with a thumbs-up gesture. He was losing blood rapidly. Captain Dangi quickly dragged Mukesh to a position behind the tree that made him less vulnerable to the incoming fire. He then signaled to one of the other soldiers holding ground behind them to crawl to their position to watch over the injured Mukesh. As the commandos provided him covering fire, Naib Subedar Tribhuwan Singh crawled on his hands and knees to reach the wounded man. Tribhuwan knew what had to be done. Reaching Mukesh, he quickly put pressure on the man's wounds with both hands to prevent further blood loss, telling him that the operation would be over soon and help was on its way. Mukesh's face was deathly pale by now, his breathing more rapid. Blood oozing from his own gunshot wounds, Captain Dangi stuck his TAR-21 out from behind the tree and opened fire at the advancing terrorists. In the tense crossfire, the officer's bullets hit one of the terrorists, sending him crashing to the ground. It was Adil Ahmed Mir. But he wasn't dead yet. Just as Captain Dangi was about to open a final burst at the fallen terrorist to finish him off, a bullet came whizzing through the air and hit his assault rifle, jamming it and rendering it useless. A more devastating situation could not have transpired. Captain Dangi was now holding nothing but a piece of metal composite in his hands in the middle of a firefight at 10 meters. And he didn't have a moment to lose to think of alternatives. He swiftly bent over to pick up Mukesh's weapon. Just then, the last standing terrorist decided to make a break for it, dashing full speed towards the tall grass about 30 meters away that led down to the stream behind Baku village. As he reached the grass, he dropped to his hands and knees and began crawling through it, trying to disappear in the undergrowth. Captain Dangi checked the magazine of his new weapon only to find that Mukesh had emptied it in the firefight. Quickly slamming a new magazine in, Captain Dangi stepped out of his position to finish off Adil Ahmed Mir, who he had hit a moment ago. Mir, lying a few meters away, had enough strength to swing his weapon forward and open a fresh burst of fire directly at the now fully exposed Captain Dangi. A bullet grazed Captain Dangi's cheek, an inch to the right, and it would have been a direct headshot that would have instantly killed the young officer. Thankfully the bullet had only opened Captain Dangi's skin, a mere trifle compared to the first 2 gunshot wounds. That bullet was the last of the dying terrorist's ammunition. Captain Dangi stepped up quickly, pumping 10 rounds into him. Standing over him to make sure it was over, Captain Dangi bent closer to take a look at the terrorist's face. Before I took the headshot, I recognized him. It was Adil. 10 meters behind, Tribhuwan was still tending to the injured Mukesh and was unable to engage the third terrorist who had fled towards the stream. Captain Dangi, bleeding heavily and losing strength, refused to be shifted out of the encounter site. Adil was dead, but this operation would be incomplete if the third man escaped. I didn't mind bleeding a little more. I knew I could deal with it, Captain. Dangi recalls. If this guy made it to the stream, there was no way we were going to get him, at least not that day. Captain. Dangi quietly moved in the direction where the terrorist had disappeared into the undergrowth. The large rucksack on his back gave the man's location away. I could see something moving. His rucksack blew his cover. It was sticking out as he crawled on his belly towards the stream. His limbs stiffening from the pain and blood loss, Captain. Dangi stepped on the grass, his weapon ready. But this time there would be no firefight as the young officer crept up on the terrorist and killed him in a quick burst of close-range fire. It was time for Captain Dangi to take another headshot. The third man didn't put up a fight. His commander was dead and all he wanted to do was escape. He had lost the will. It made my job easier, says Captain Dangi. The officer did not stop to savor his victory. There were other priorities for now, Mukesh. Blood dripping to the ground, Captain Dangi stumbled back to check on his buddy. Mukesh was still conscious. Kahat Rna, Dugolian Commando ko man ki liye kavi nahi, told you 2 bullets aren't enough to kill a commando, Captain. Dangi grinned. As the sun began its final descent, the two men smiled. From start to finish, the operation had lasted less than 20 minutes. From the time the first terrorist opened fire, till the time Captain Dangi fired that final headshot, it had been just 8 minutes. The killing of Adil Ahmed Mir that evening in Baku village would be the definition of a lightning-quick operation. The 5 gunshot wounds suffered by 2 commandos were acceptable damage. Every operation begins with the recognition that injuries are highly likely, if not fatal. The Caspier vehicle carried the team back to its operating base in Hardamir, where an army helicopter was waiting to fly Captain Dangi and Mukesh to the 92 base hospital in Srinagar. In Rohtak, Ritu was close to panicking. Every passing minute had seemed like an eternity to her as she fought to keep away frightening thoughts. Like a good professional, Captain Dangi had shared broad aspects of his work with his family, but never the specific details, as much for their own safety as his. What Ritu did know was that her fiancé operated in South Kashmir. Unable to bear the worry any longer, she contacted a paramilitary officer also deployed in trial. The officer was a friend of her cousin's. It was through him that Ritu learnt of Captain Dangi's mission to hunt a deadly terrorist commander. That piece of information was enough for Ritu to throw Captain Dangi's promise right out of the window, that he would call her back and not to worry. She began dialing his number repeatedly, but there was no response. The young commando's phone happened to be with his team commander, a major, who finally picked it up at 2100 hours. Ritu felt her skin crawl. In a calm tone, the major informed her that Captain Dangi had suffered minor injuries in the operation and had been admitted to hospital. Ritu phoned nobody else that night, neither her family nor Captain Dangi's mother, and she didn't sleep. Through the night, she tried to contact Captain Dangi, hoping his phone had somehow found its way back to him. But it wasn't until the next morning that she finally heard his voice. Captain Dangi's CO and team commander arrived at the hospital to see him early on the 20th of June. The major dialed Ritu's number and handed the phone to Captain Dangi. I was too shy to speak to my fiancée in the presence of my CO and the team commander. I just told her I would speak to her after 2 days. She was silent. She wanted to talk, but she understood the situation I was in, he says. Their wedding had to be postponed from August to December as Captain Dangi's injuries needed time to heal. Both commandos were discharged from the base hospital after 3 weeks. 6 months later, Captain Jaidev Dangi was awarded India's second highest peacetime gallantry award, the Kirti Chakra, on the 25th of January 2015 for showing dauntless courage and extraordinary valor under heavy fire from close quarters in face of certain death. The award citation would note that despite his near-fatal injuries, the officer refused to be evacuated till the termination of operations. He would receive the award from the President of India at the Rashtrapati Bhawan on the 21st of March 2015. With him was Ritu, his bride of 3 months, his mother and his best friend, Captain Pradeep Balhara of a sister SF unit. Captain. Dangi's example has inspired many in and around Haryana's Medina village to join the military. Jaidev was the first boy from our school to join the NDA, says Ravinder Dangi, director at the Ramakrishna Paramhansa Senior Secondary School where Captain Dangi had studied. But now a steady stream of students joins the academy every year following in his footsteps. He will remain an inspiration for current and future generations of students. School friends talk fondly of Jaidev, who still meets them on the rare occasion that he has time off from his duties. They remember how he once limped to school with his foot in a plaster cast as he did not want to miss classes. I told him to take leave and rest. I loved his answer. He said he would rather sit in class than sit at home, the school director says. After the Baku operation, Captain Dangi entered a para-refresher course that commandos have to undergo every year to hone the skills. It was during the toil of this course that Captain Dangi would receive news about the gallantry decoration the recently elected Narendra Modi government had decided to pin on him. No words can explain the joy and pride I felt when I was told I had been awarded the Kirti Chakra. I had never imagined in my dreams that I would come so far in life, says Captain Dangi. The operation that killed Adil Ahmed Mir would be the first major SF win in Kashmir under the new Modi government, barely a month old at the time. It would become a touchstone referred to by the country's security top brass as India's parachute regiment units prepared for devastatingly more ambitious operations in the months that followed. SF officers rarely have time for leisure or other interests. In Captain Dangi's case, the binding nature of his work allows him hobbies not far removed from his professional duties. In the little spare time that Captain Dangi gets, he pursues interests deeply related to the profession he has chosen for himself. He likes to fire different types of weapons, research tactics employed by global special operations units, and read about military leaders. Mongol leader Genghis Khan, who rose from humble beginnings to carve out the largest empire in history, tops his list of favorites. Captain Dangi's beard was shaved off at the hospital to treat the wound on his cheek. As they cleaned him up, he remembers the mixed feelings he had at the time. Ritu really loved that beard. I would have to grow it back really fast, he remembers. Following the operation in South Kashmir, Captain Dangi was posted as an instructor at the NDA outside Pune, where cadets, like he once was, prepare for a military career. At the time this book was written, the young officer was waiting to complete the posting and return to the Kashmir Valley to do what he likes the most: hunt.